Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be looking at 10 different NHL players who have disappointed everybody so far this year. Now, I say so far, but we really only have a few more games to go of this NHL season. So for most players, the season that they've gotten so far is what they're going to get. But across the NHL, who have been the most disappointing players throughout the league and who have failed to live up to expectations the most? Watch till the end for all the disappointing players and all of my picks, and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so if you like hockey, this channel is the place to be. Now let's start this list off with a bang, shall we? And go on to, in my opinion, one of the more underratedly disappointing players of this year. Let's move on to the third overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft and go on to Chicago Blackhawks forward Kirby Dock. Now while Jack Hughes is absolutely lighting things up and being fantastic, Kirby Dock this season took a major step back. In 70 games this year, he's gotten 9 goals, 17 assists for 26 points, but his point per game numbers were a lot worse only just a couple of months ago. He's been a lot better recently, but even saying that, that's not exactly the biggest compliment for him. Last year, he had a pretty interesting season where in 18 games, he got 10 points. He was a player that I think could have broken out this year truly into a true top 6 role, maybe getting around 40, maybe 50 points, but it has been a disastrous season for Kirby Dock, and let's hope that next year is much better. The funny thing is, even though Capo Caco has struggled, we've seen so many people call him a bust already, but for Kirby Dock, who's a 21-year-old, a third overall pick, and who's playing 18 minutes a night this season, to only be producing 26 points in 70 games, I think does not get enough credit for how bad it's been, and that's with Kirby Dock being better recently. And although last year was pretty decent in the games he has played, up to this point, Kirby Dock's NHL career has not been all too great. Let's go on to the second NHL player who has disappointed everybody this season, and let's go on to another pretty spicy pick here. In my opinion, this player actually might be the most overrated goaltender right now in the NHL, and although Philadelphia's defense has not given him any favors, I also don't think that Carter Hart has been good whatsoever. With 45 games this year, Carter Hart has posted a .905 save percentage, but in terms of goals saved above expected, which looks at the quality of saves that he's making and also the quality of shots he's letting in, Carter Hart has a -6.9 goals saved above expected, which is nice for us, but not very nice for him in Philadelphia. That's 84th among all goaltenders after having a -24 last year and being last place in the entire NHL. In my opinion, Carter Hart is a player that really drastically needs to have a much better year, and I thought this year would have been the year we saw him rebound, get in a much better place, and hopefully see Philadelphia make the playoffs. Obviously, that did not happen. A lot of those things did not happen, my goodness, but with Carter Hart, I think desperately next season, this next year might be what really shows us what Carter Hart is truly. If he can't get back to a solid level, in my opinion, Philadelphia's goaltending is going to be in a much weirder place. I mean, we saw with Mackenzie Blackwood as well, how over these past couple of years with injuries and all this, he's continued to slump. If that continues for Carter Hart, I'm not sure how great he's going to be as an NHL starter. So now let's move on to a Montreal Canadian. Quite a few options from this Habs team, especially with their season overall being extremely disappointing. Thankfully, I did not predict them to make the playoffs, but they have been much worse than expected. I think a decent reason because of that is the center situation compared to the last year, and a big reason of that is Christian Dvorak. He's a player that has pretty much disappointed everybody this year, including me. He was a player that around the rumors in the trade last year, I was a pretty big fan of the fit there in Montreal, and there still could be some good potential there, but in 52 games this year, he has 10 goals, 17 assists for 27 points. Honestly, not that horrible when you look at the rest of the Montreal Canadiens and their stats as well, but at the same time, Christian Dvorak's defensive play, I think, was a huge part of the trade and a huge reason why I thought he could be a great fit for the Habs, and this year, it hasn't exactly been as prominent nor as consistent, which I think is a big problem going forward if he is going to be the second-line center. At the same time, Dvorak was always going to be a centerman that needed some good wingers around him to truly produce in both ends of the ice, and he definitely has not gotten that truly with the Habs this year. That could obviously change, but again, that two-way game that was really promised and advertised and was played in Arizona hasn't transitioned whatsoever in Montreal. There is still time for that to happen, but definitely not looking like a great trade overall, especially since they traded a first-round pick. Now let's move on to one of the more younger players on this list. Along the same lines as Kirby Dock, this is a player that I was expecting to have a pretty great year for the LA Kings, and with LA having a very successful and solid season up to this point, I thought this player would have been a decent part of that forward group, especially coming into his 22-year-old season. Next up at the 4th spot, and the 4th player disappointing everybody this year, I'm going to go with Gabriel Velardi. Now, the thing with Velardi that's interesting is that last season in 52 games, he got 23 points, looked pretty solid, and obviously all the back injuries that he was suffering, looked pretty good for what he had to go through. And I thought this year we could see him up to around maybe 30, 40 points in the year, having another solid season, getting better and better offensively, and really going into the NHL game full time and getting used to it. Well, this year he's only played 23 games and has gotten 3 goals for 3 points. He was sent down to the AHL in November, and although he was around a point per game, which is obviously what you want to see, at the same time, I was expecting Velardi's season to be much different from this, with both the production and where he was playing. Now, we're going to move on to another goaltender here that, in my opinion, has been pretty disappointing. He's definitely been better as of late, especially over the past couple of weeks, but overall, season-wide, I think he's been a pretty major disappointment. At number 5, and the 5th player, really disappointing everybody, I have Elvis Merslickens. Now, you might not have expected to see Merslickens on this list, but at the same time, in 55 games, he has a .906 save percentage, which isn't the worst in the world, but when you look at his goals saved above expected, he is right now at a pretty bad spot. At the moment, 95th in the entire NHL with a -8.54. Now, I like Merslickens a lot, and he was really solid over these last couple of seasons before this year, but at the same time, I think Columbus's struggles, a lot of it can be contributed to both Korpisalo and Merslickens not playing up to snuff. Although the save percentage with Merslickens is fine, and especially recently, he's looked a lot better, he's been letting in a lot of shots that he probably shouldn't be, and I think when it comes to Columbus, although there might be some shakiness there, and I still think Merslickens is the starter of the future for them, there is some growing pains there, and Columbus's defense, as well as it starts to improve, I think will help Merslickens too. But I think this year, Merslickens does not get really enough flack for just how mediocre and below average he's been. But now going on to the first defenseman of this list at number 6, and the 6th player disappointing everybody so far this year, we're going to go to a guy that was one of the highest paid defensemen over these last couple of years, especially in free agency, and was looked at as a pretty big piece of this Devils decor going into the future in Dougie Hamilton. Now, the thing was with Dougie Hamilton, I thought he was a decent signing at the time, especially offensively. I thought he would fit well into the Devils structure, but that hasn't quite happened yet. In 57 games, he's got 9 goals, 20 assists for 29 points. He's been a little bit better recently, but at the same time, his impact has definitely not been felt there as much as it probably needed to be. And when it comes to the defensive style of play as well that Dougie Hamilton has, he has this reputation of being a horrible defensive player. Although he has been horrible this year, in Carolina, I thought he was okay and sometimes decent, although he would make some big mistakes. But in New Jersey this year, he has had that reputation of terrible defensive play actually meaning something. He's been horrible defensively with New Jersey up to this point. And I feel like when you're paying a guy $9 million, you need to see much better results from him. We'll see what happens in year 2, but so far, Hamilton's start in New Jersey isn't going as planned. But now let's move on to number 7, and throughout this list, there's going to be some surprising players. I mean, guys like Gabriel Velardi aren't common picks by any means. But going on to number 7, we're going to go to maybe my most surprising pick of the top 10 in William Karlsson of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, well, I want you to guess, how many points does William Karlsson have in 63 games this year? He has 32 points, 11 goals, 21 assists for 32 points. You compare that to last year, which was even a down year for him, where in 56 games, he got 14 goals, 25 assists for 39 points. I think many people kind of just expect William Karlsson and have the expectation that he's always going to be this 60-point, 70-point player for the Golden Knights, but really, his downfall and his slow decline hasn't really been publicized, I think, as much as it should. I mean, this guy got 43 points just 4 years ago with the Vegas Golden, or 43 goals just 4 years ago with the Vegas Golden Knights. Then after that, 56 points in 82 games, then 46 in 63 games, and ever since then, we've seen more and more of a decline. Now, the thing is, when it comes to William Karlsson, his defensive play has steadily gotten better, and this year, it's been pretty great, but at the same time, the offensive results and the finishing has pretty much evaporated. But now let's move on to number 8, and the 8th player disappointing everybody this season, but personally disappointing me the most, dang it, with Philipp Grubauer. And yes, that is a Philipp Grubauer jersey right behind me. And I I don't know why I did that. I liked him. I love to support German hockey players. Love to see that nation grow a lot of hockey players. And I thought, okay, Grubauer is one of the players that I'm pretty sure is going to stick around with Seattle. I'm pretty sure is going to be pretty good. And then this year, in 54 games, he has an .890 save percentage. Now, I have noticed Grubauer being a little bit better for the Kraken over the last couple of weeks, but he's still been the league's worst goaltender in terms of goals saved above expected. I think at a plus 29 right now. And although that has definitely improved, Grubauer is a player that, just like Dougie Hamilton, was a pretty big free agent signing. And now looking back on it, is looking like a horrible deal by the Kraken. Now, I feel like if Seattle had actually stable and average goaltending from Grubauer this year, they'd be a much better team, maybe around a point where not LA, but like Anaheim is around that playoff race. Their goaltending has been a huge reason of the losses in Seattle, and Grubauer is the main reason for that. And again, he has been better, and I think he will be better in year 2, but at the same time, this first year with Seattle, I think is just such a disappointment, and Grubauer is probably the biggest reason why. But now let's move on to the second defenseman of this list, and the 9th player disappointing everybody so far this year. Let's go to a guy that's been talked about quite a bit, especially early on the season, and although he has been better lately, I think season-wide has had a pretty disappointing 2022 in Jake Muzzin. Now, the thing was, before this year, and really over the past 3 seasons, Muzzin has been the most dependable, the most physical, the most consistent defensive defenseman on Toronto by a pretty large margin. But this year, age 33, that defensive play has just absolutely tanked throughout the year. Especially early on the season, he was straight horrible, and at times was arguably the least worst defenseman in terms of actual impact and actual play. He has been better lately, and I think especially come playoff time, he'll be just fine. But at the same time, there's some obvious aging and some obvious wear and tear that Muzzin is going through, and it looks like Muzzin being that true top 4 amazing defenseman, those days are long gone now. But now let's move on to number 10, and the last player that has disappointed every single person I'm willing to bet on this planet this season. Let's go on to the last goaltender of this list, and I want to take you to last offseason, where we saw a pretty big trade between the Detroit Red Wings and the Carolina Hurricanes, where the Canes sent Alex Nedeljkovic to the Red Wings, and it was looked at as a pretty major steal for Detroit. And with Carolina, instead, they went after Freddie Anderson and Antti Raanta, who were suffering from some major injury histories and were on the older side of things. And at the same time, I thought for Detroit, they were getting a much younger goaltender, maybe the better goaltender at the time. And for Carolina, they might have been making a big mistake in their tandem. But we've obviously seen how Carolina's goaltending has been this year, pretty fantastic. And Alex Nedeljkovic has been pretty disappointing. In 56 games played this year, he has a straight .900 save percentage, a 3.36 goals against average. And in terms of goals saved above expected, which I think is the most important stat for goaltenders, especially looking at context, he has been at 108th overall in the entire NHL and at a minus 1304 goals saved above expected, which is still among the worst in the entire National Hockey League. This is a player that, again, has been a little bit better lately. I think he was in the bottom 5 just a couple months ago, but he was a player that was so effective, so solid for the Canes last year, and at age 25, I thought he would have had a bright future and would have been a great first-year player for Detroit and would have solved, really, their goaltending issues with Thomas Greiss not being up to snuff. But Nedeljkovic has been worse than Greiss this year, and in all facets has been a major disappointment. There's obviously still time to grow there. He is 26 years old, but at the same time, Detroit better hope Sebastian Cossa turns out well. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Comment down below what you guys agree and disagree with my list, and let me know in the comments who are the most disappointing players in the entire NHL, and who's the most disappointing player from your favorite NHL team this year. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you share this video with your friends. Get it out to any hockey fans you guys might know. Make sure you click on this card for all my hockey rankings content in one playlist. And my name is Nathan. Have a great day. Drink some water, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.